The government could not avoid the Senate scandal during the first week of Parliament. Suspended Senator Mike Duffy, facing 31 charges, including fraud, breach of trust and bribery, sent his lawyer to court to seek a speedy trial date, fueling suspicions he's trying to cripple the Conservatives' election campaign.
This isn't a political case. This is a criminal case. And it's going to be conducted professionally, but please understand, this isn't being run as a personal or political vendetta.
So Duffy's lawyer says this trial won't be turned into a political circus. But if this case takes place during the election campaign, how does that bode for the Conservatives, Duffy's former party? I'm joined now by Stephen Harper's former Deputy Chief of Staff, Keith Beardsley, and criminal lawyer, Solomon Friedman. So, Mr. Friedman, Don Bain, Mr. Duffy's lawyer, is going to be back in court on Tuesday. Will he get an early trial date?
Well, it certainly sounds like he will, by having waived his preliminary inquiry, and it appears electing a trial in the Ontario Court of Justice. That's generally the most expeditious way to proceed to trial.
Okay, now, we know we have a fixed election date, October the 19th. Is it likely Duffy's trial happens before or during that election campaign?
Well, there are many factors that are going to have to be taken into consideration. First of all, we don't know at this point what exactly the length of Mr. Duffy's trial is anticipated to be. In other words, you can get a shorter trial in shorter order. Longer trials, a longer block of court time is going to take longer to reserve.
Lawyers talking about 6 to 8 weeks.
Oh, I can say, having been in provincial court this morning setting trial dates, that we're right about at that window where, 12 months, 10 months wouldn't really be out of the ordinary for a trial of that nature. So we're going to be bumping up pretty close to that election season.
All right. Keith, you've been there. You sat around the table in the lounge room block. Yep. What's going through their minds, and how do they deal with this?
Oh, I guess it's just, here we go again. And, I mean, they've probably got their talk points, everything ready. It's going to be the standard. We can't comment, there's a court case, and they're going to go back, Nigel Wright's being cleared. We hope that anyone who's guilty gets punished, this type of thing. So it's going to be variations of that. But in the meantime, their biggest problem is they don't know what they don't know. I mean, Mike has said he's got new stuff that he's going to reveal. He probably does. So their problem is waiting for that shoe to fall and trying to anticipate what it might be, try and build contingency plans in. But again, they're going to fall back almost consistently to those same talk points. We can't comment because of the trial.
But surely they must know what Duffy's got up his plate, because they've seen most of the emails. They would know what went down.
They should. Anything that was government centered or came out from the government, to him, emails, this type of thing, they should have copies of. Now, is there other things? Are there conversations? Are there witnesses to what went on that Duffy has up his sleeve? We don't know this, and they don't know it as well. So Mike, being the showman that he is, you can almost guarantee that it will be a political circus, and that's the last thing the government needs going into an election or in the middle of an election. So that brings up the next question. You mentioned the Fixed Election Dates Act. Do they find an excuse to go earlier and try and short circuit where the Duffy trial would go?
Mr. Friedman, Duffy's lawyer has said that he hasn't ruled out calling the Prime Minister. Now, the Prime Minister's denied he knew anything about this $90,000 payment from Nigel Wright to Mike Duffy. The RCMP says there is no evidence. Can they get the Prime Minister called before the witness stand if there is no real evidence to support that?
Well, that's a good question. In general, when a subpoena is issued either by the defense or by the Crown, what's simply required is you show up to a justice of the peace and give a very vague outline of why this person could have evidence. It's a very low bar to issue a subpoena in a criminal case. Now, there may be issues here of parliamentary privilege if Stephen Harper refuses to testify, but it's generally not a high threshold to satisfy in order to get that subpoena issued by a justice of the peace to compel somebody to come to criminal court and give evidence.
Well, presumably, the PMO might fight a subpoena, but certainly they wouldn't be foolish enough to try parliamentary immunity.
Well, you're into optics, and how does this play out? And the optics are going to be, how close to an election date are you? I mean, this is really what it boils down to. If this is done well in advance of when they're planning to go, they can figure that the population will gradually forget about the issue. But if it's done right in the middle of an election, it becomes a huge one of optics. And how does the Prime Minister respond? How does PMO respond? Is it worth the risk of going to court? All these options come into play. And it's optics. If you avoid it, do the population think you're guilty? Or do you go forward and get hammered in the media anyways, even if there's nothing new that comes out?
Now, Mr. Friedman, Don Bain, Duffy's lawyer, says this is not about political vengeance or a vendetta, but there's no avoiding it, isn't it?
Well, we have to remember, Don Bain's role here is to achieve the best possible result for his client, and that's a verdict of not guilty. He's going to be playing to really an audience of one, and that's a provincial court judge sitting in a courthouse in Ottawa. Could this have wider-reaching political ramifications? Certainly. But, a judge is going to have very little tolerance for a case that really turns into a circus or a sideshow. Judges have tremendous discretion in terms of focusing proceedings, focusing issues, and I'd expect that, knowing the judges of our court, I'd expect this to be, run neatly in that way about whether or not the Crown can prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Now, Mike Duffy's been talking to almost everybody in this town, not me, but as you know, he has been, and he's been saying that this trial is going to show the sleazy, seedy underside of politics. Harper's going to get tarnished. Anybody around him is going to get tarnished. I mean, that's probably the case, isn't it?
Well, who in Canada thinks politics isn't a sleazy business to start with? So I don't think there's anything surprising there. But yeah, sure, there's lots of stuff that goes on in the back rooms. There's lots of stuff that's said one-on-one in politics that never comes to the surface. So if he's trying to take that and sort of explode what happens behind the scenes, I mean, the average person may be shocked. I mean, if you're in politics or if you're in this type of business and environment, or even as a reporter, you're not. It's sort of everyday business. But certainly as far as the media sort of circus that will surround him when he's in there and the publicity he'll get out of it, he'll make his point.
Now, just as a lawyer, would you want your client talking to a bunch of journalists and other people?
My general practice is, first of all, you don't talk about a case, your client doesn't talk about a case, and there's a simple reason for that. That judge who ultimately will hear the trial probably doesn't want you airing a defense out in public, but there are also tactical considerations. You don't want to be showing your hand. Remember, in our system, it's the Crown that bears the burden, and the defense that really in many ways can play trial by ambush. So you don't want to be giving away too many of these cards. We don't know at this point what the Crown is going to do. Only Mr. Duffy and his counsel know that. But at the same time, Mike Duffy probably shouldn't want all of Ottawa knowing what his defense strategy is.
Well, I don't think that's going to happen. Thanks very much.